Right, well, some Johannesburg Emergency Services personnel say they've been paid less than half their April salaries, and health workers in the City of Joburg say they are working without adequate protective gear. Let's find out, get an explanation on these and other issues, and we'll chat now to City of Joburg's mayoral spokesperson, Mlimandlela Ndamase. Mlimandlela, good morning, and thanks so much for your time. So let's start first with EMS personnel saying that they were paid less than half their salaries. Is that true?
Well, Joanne, I think we must first apologize as the city to the EMS employees and including some employees within our Johannesburg Metro Police Department. The city implemented a new SAP system, which is a payment system for payroll, on the 1st of April. And unfortunately, that was just soon after the lockdown. And it was somehow affected by the conditions that were brought about by the lockdown in terms of the regulations. And as such, some of the employees, but not all, were affected by not receiving all their salaries and allowances and overtime pay on time. The city has since rectified the situation. We have paid some of the employees on the 28th of April. Some were paid on the 6th of May yesterday, so that we can make sure that everyone receives what is due to them in terms of allowances. As with all new systems that are implemented in any environment, you do anticipate some glitches of this nature, and unfortunately, this particular glitch happens at a time when we are all engaged in trying to make a city response to COVID-19, and our EMS officials, unfortunately, are the most critical at this particular point in time, and it's most unfortunate that they had to suffer this kind of inconvenience.
Did you know that that would be that would happen at this change of system? Did you have any idea that some of them might have to receive less than what they usually receive?
Well, the tests that had been run on the system indicated that we would be able to pay everybody as is normal within the city and its processes. But obviously, there's a number of interdependencies at play. Obviously, the system runs to pay salaries, and thereafter there are things like allowances and overpays, which then require that the relevant departments submit documentation to confirm what is due to each and every individual within the system. Now, with the lockdown and those regulations, some of those submissions that had to be made for these payments to be effected were unfortunately delayed and were not captured on time to allow the system to be able to run with them. And that is then exacerbated by the fact that it is a new system and unfortunately, with its own glitches, could not process all the payments on time.
All right. So a lot of them say they received no warning about this, and of course they've had debit orders go off, they've had the usual payments go off. Will you, and some of these come with penalties, would you be carrying the cost of those penalties for, for the next month when you are going to be paying them in full? Will you be compensating for that?
Well, that's a commitment we cannot make at this stage, Uveka, but what is happening is that the MMC responsible for our corporate and shared services has requested a report from the department to know exactly how many employees were paid late, how many were not paid, and what amounts were not paid to them. There were some duplications in the system which must be rectified, and I am certain that in her engagements with Labour, they will find a way on how do we resolve some of the inconveniences that arose out of the late payment of the allowances and the overtime.
Okay, so in their next paycheck, Mlimandlela, they are going to get what was owed to them from this past salary in addition to their full salary in the next round. Am I understanding you correctly?
Well, Uveka, we've already paid what was not included in their last salary run.
Okay.
So those payments have been done. What we are now doing is to just verify that there is none that has been left out. So going forward, the system should function optimally and ordinarily and should receive payments to all employees of the city on time.
There was also some concern that in that system change, some of the employee numbers were changed as well. And they are concerned now about pensions and all of that. So can you explain what happened there and if that did indeed happen?
Well, with the new system, unfortunately, all employees of the city will be getting new SAP numbers. Okay. And these are numbers that will obviously be their new employee numbers. There will be a migration process which will obviously have no effect on their salaries, their benefits, and pay, etc. But it is really just a migration from one system to another that will then begin to give new numbers. But obviously a continuation of the employment status and contracts that people have with the city.
All right, and just tell us about the issue when it comes to PPE. Some of them saying that they don't have sanitizer, there's no masks, there's no gloves. Others saying that what they did receive came from gift of the givers. Why has the city not been able to provide these for its workers?
Well, Joanne, I think as the city, on the commencement of the lockdown, we were able to procure and provide PPE, sanitizers, and all of the relevant equipment to our essential workers. And we must remember that it is illegal not to do so.
Yeah.
So it is a responsibility that the city has to satisfy. As we all know, and given the size of the city of Johannesburg, there has been quite a scramble to access PPEs throughout the country, and hence the number of interventions that have been made both in government and outside government to try and support the need and the demand that has arose. The city has augmented those supplies. There have been shortages, and we accept and we're thankful for those who have come forward and donated in support of the essential workers of the city. But with the procurement plan and process of the city that is in place, we will be receiving additional supplies that will be able to augment and support the work that is being done by our essential workers throughout the city.
All right, and they're also concerned, telling us that 90% of firefighters have not been tested for COVID-19. Can you just tell us what's been happening with your testing process? Is it mandatory that essential workers like this be tested?
I think, Joanne, importantly, it's important to note that not everyone will be tested. There's a process of screening, and if through screening there is a requirement that you'll be tested, then you will go forth into testing.
Okay, so are you screening them every day that they come to work? Is that screening happening, and then you will take it further if there's a suspect case?
Well, already we've picked up suspect cases in some of the divisions within the city. Implementation of screening in the various departments, especially essential services, is a practice that has now become standard. And when people have been identified as potential candidates, it is then that they will be elevated or passed on to testing over and above screening. Okay,
do you have any information at hand at the moment when it comes to emergency services, if there are any that have tested positive and are being treated at the moment?
Not at this stage. We've had an employee at City Power, we've had an employee at one of the other departments within the city. But in as far as our emergency management services are concerned, no confirmed case of COVID-19 has been reported or identified at this particular point.
All right, thanks so much for the clarity there. Mayoral spokesperson Mlimandlela and Damase, they're just responding to a story we ran about emergency services personnel talking about receiving less than half their salaries. But it seems, according to him, that this has been sorted.